In Elbaf, we are introduced to the Holy Knights formally for the first time. Throughout the members, we see that each one belongs to a prestigious family from the Holy Land except for Gunko. I think the reason why this is because Gunko has unique nature. I think she technically could be the daughter of J. Garcia Saturn, but she was an experiment of his. We know, oddly, in the Holy Land, there are a lot of experiments on children, like, say, how the Boa sisters were given their respective devil fruits for entertainment, or like how J. Garcia Saturn experimented on Bonnie to see how young a child could be to receive a devil fruit without actually eating it, since she was a baby at the time. So I could see Gunko being a clone. Now, a clone of who is the question. A lot of people online have been saying that Gunko could be a clone of Guinea. And I get it, or Jenny. And I get it because both their names start with G. So I see the correlation. And I will say the moment someone says that Gunko looks like Bonnie, or if Bonnie sees Gunko and says that she looks like her mother, because of course Bonnie knows what Guinea looks like because of Kuma's memory bubble, I'd say that's a confirmed theory. But if that doesn't happen, I think it's a possibility that Gunko could be a clone of Koala. Because if you remember, Koala, before she was rescued by Fisher Tiger, was a slave in the Holy Land, right? She is also the only human to have the mark of the sun on her back, much like many members of Fisher Tiger's crew have, right? So with that being said, I think this matches up with Gunko because we know from the explanation of how the Abyss magic circle works is that in order to use the Abyss, you need to have some sort of mark of the Abyss on your person. That means Gunko, like Koala, has some sort of marking, has some sort of tattoo in order for her to use the Abyss. That's a correlation there. Both of them are dressed like chauffeurs because both of them wear very similar hats and goggles, and then even Gunko has a type of coat that you can see as a sort of fancy chauffeur's coat, but I understand how she could be more so inspired by a military outfit. That much is certain. But I'm just saying there's some correlation between the two, especially seeing as how Koala now wears a fancy blouse, which is very time period piece like. So again, I say both of them do look like chauffeurs. Technically, Gunko does drive Garling somewhere when they are finished with Loki by the use of her bird that she makes out of her arrow fruit powers. So yes, she was literally his chauffeur. That's just something to point out as well. So she's like a chauffeur slash aviator in that way. Someone who commands a vehicle. But continuing, both of them too don't wear pants, which is a funny aspect of things. And then both of them do use a unique fighting style. Gunko, using her arrow fruit, does use the ability to increase the size of her hands and feet, and also it's used to increase her momentum. Koala is the only human that uses Fishman Karate, which of course is a specialized fighting style. So there is a bit of correlation between the two. Both of them use their hands and feet to fight, as opposed to using a type of weapon. Then, here's another interesting thing. Both of them are associated with men with pyrokinetic abilities. Koala being associated with Sabo, who is the inheritor of the flame fruit, which makes him a living fire because it's a Logia type. And then we have Figlin Shamrock with his sword, who has eaten the supposed dog fruit mythical type Cerberus, which appears to have some sort of pyrokinetic properties to it, as we see when Cerberus stabs Loki. Now, with that being said, I could see J. Garcia Saturn taking samples from various child slaves at the time that Koala was a slave and use that material in various cloning experiments, which is how you get Gunko. Maybe Gunko is the only successful clone he was able to make on his own, because we do know that Jay Garcia Saturn is a scientist of maybe not similar caliber, but of at least some renown and competency to perhaps be able to achieve a cloning experiment like Gunko. Perhaps after, say, Stussy was created, seeing as how she was the first successful human clone in history, Jay Garcia Saturn took that technology and used that in various experiments of his own to make somebody like Gunko. So I could see that happening. Therefore, effectively, Gunko, in an odd way, much like how Stussy in an odd way, is the daughter of Jay Garcia Saturn. Now, another thing that's interesting, but I don't know if it goes anywhere, I do find it funny that she has heterochromia, and Jay Garcia Saturn, when he assumed his Gyuki state, had some sort of paralyzing and sometimes fatal eye ability. Like he would stare at people and they would be pinned down to the ground, or he would stare at a weaker person like a Marine when he first enters Egghead and that Marine's head just popped. So yeah, that's a weird correlation there. Additionally, the heterochromia could lend to her being some sort of experiment, because that is a very odd trait that we do not ever see in One Piece. So she does stand out too in that regard. Also, apparently, Gunko means army child, and Koala was inducted into the Revolutionary Army as a child. So take what you will from that. So to break things down, I do think that Gunko is a clone of Koala. They have very similar aesthetics. Both of them have very similar markings on their body that are both circles, now that I think about it, because if we think that the mark of the abyss is that weird map icon mixed with the magic circle that we see on Sommers when he first appears, Gunko might have the same thing, which is kind of reminiscent, at least in shape, to the mark of the sun that is most likely on Koala's back. And then both of them are martial artists of sorts. Gunko mostly cheating and using her arrow fruit powers to boost herself, while Koala is actually using a legitimate fighting style. So with that being said, I can't wait to see how this shakes out in the future. Give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Works It!